The movie I've chosen to do a scene analysis of is Hush. It's a movie directed and edited by Mike Flanagan. It's an American slasher thriller film and it was brought out in 2016. I chose to do this movie because when I watched it, I remembered a lot about it and it interested me because there's a lot of things in the movie that I could play with, that I didn't just have to recreate the scene, but I could bring something else to it, and it provoked a lot of idea. So, and as well, it's a thriller and horror film, which I have a lot of interest in, so it was kind of a motivation to me, so it kind of pushed me to want to do it. So the movie is set in a remote area where she lives. She lives alone with a neighbour who comes over to visit her. The main character's name is Madison, and she's a deaf woman who lost her ability to hear and speak when she was 13 due to a botched surgery of meningitis. To advance her career, she then moved out to this wooded, isolated area. It starts with her neighbour coming over, returning a book to her, and then her talking about her 7 endings which she has, because she's very conflicted with them. Obviously sign language because she can't speak, but she's obviously conferring with her neighbour over this because she's very frustrated with herself. And then we see her go back in and then working, and when she's working we can hear her speaking to herself in her head, which I found really interesting because obviously she can't speak, so she doesn't have a voice, but we hear her voice through her head, and it's like she's fighting with herself as if there's a second version of her, which I found really cool. And then she's working on her book in her house, and then her neighbour comes up banging on the door screaming because this murderer is coming after her, but obviously Madison doesn't know because she's deaf and blind, so can't hear her. The murderer stabs her and kills her, and then the murderer gets really fascinated by this and realises that she's deaf, so then he sees this as a game and chooses next victim, obviously, which I found really weird. And then the scene I've chosen is when she realised she was being stalked. So what happens is she's sitting at her laptop, the camera at a very close-up frame focused on her face, slowly jumped from her to the laptop, frustrated, her typing over her book, frustrated because her ex-boyfriend just tried to contact her and her family from home are trying to get her to come home. Then that is completely forgotten when she gets a message from her phone. That's an image sent from her phone, but she's obviously on her laptop and doesn't have her phone. She is seen on her laptop, but she didn't have her phone, so she got a message, a picture of herself, and then the only noise she can hear is these messages coming in. It's very quiet and very eerie. Seeing photos of herself taken from that night, and then you can obviously see the fear in her face. She then turns to look at the door, and the frame shows the open door and there's no one there, and we expect to see the mass murderer pop out, but he never does. She slowly makes her way towards the door, the frame bouncing from her to the door, being very suspenseful, and all you can hear is her breathing, the crickets outside, and her movements. And then she finally gets in line with the door, and you can see from her perspective the murderer is standing there, but all you can see is him standing there. He doesn't move, he just stares at her and slowly lifts up her phone, which is really weird. And then as she bolts towards the door, this really intense music starts to play, so you kind of jump and you're really into the moment, because then he comes bolting at the exact same time as her trying to get in, but she locks the door in time as he pushes his body towards it. But the music softens, but it's very eerie the way it softens. It's not a good kind of eerie, because then he just stares at her through the window and then he moves on to the next place, and they go through this thing of trying to find a new way to get into her house, and she locking the door and pushing against it, and it's very intense. And then she watches and follows him, and she's scared for her life, and then she tries to call 911 over her laptop, but we can see the killer going around and turn off her electricity and power so she can't contact anyone. And then she's left in darkness, and all you can see is the laptop screen putting light on her face, and she's sitting there terrified with a lot of fear in her eyes, and her tears start welling up, and all you can hear is her breathing really fast because obviously she's terrified for her life. And then you can see him approaching the door that's closest to her, and then he just stares at her, and you can almost see the smile on his face even though he's wearing a mask. It's kind of like smiling already, and it's kind of like really freaky. And then from his perspective, you can see him putting the knife up to the glass when she tries to connect to the internet of her neighbour, and so did he on her phone. He puts up the knife and rubs it against the glass, and you can obviously see the blood showing that like he obviously killed the neighbour. And you can see her bouncing from him to her, of her eyes just like welling up, nothing, not a sound, not a peep over, and it's just all you can hear is the screeching of the knife against the glass. And then as he leaves, then after doing that, she follows him like really slowly around the house, and she can see him slashing her tires from the distance of her door. And then she stands there not knowing what to do, and she thinks of a plan to get her lipstick and write on the door that her boyfriend's on her way in this, but obviously he didn't feed into it. So that's the scene that I chose, because looking at it, it gives me a lot to work with like her fighting with herself in her head, the murderer trying to get her house, like the suspense, like no one else there. It's kind of two characters kind of playing off each other, and I find it really interesting. And kind of as well that she's deaf and can't speak, I find that really cool too, but there's still like these quiet sounds, and it's called Hush, so I find that really cool. But I think it's a really good film, would recommend to anyone if they want to watch it, and I find it really enjoyable to analyse, and I look forward to recreating this movie soon.